Location, virgin bush 250 kilometers east of Darwin. Job, build a town for 2,000 people. Timescale, about 3 years. Problems, isolation and a tropical climate which effectively eliminates 4 months of the working year. The bushland of the Kakadu National Park, within sight of the magnificent Arnhem Land escarpment, is recognized as a valuable part of Australia's natural heritage. But this country also conceals uranium, a resource of immense value in a world increasingly in need of energy. Australia has 15% of the world's known uranium reserves, and of these, 80% are located in this region of the Northern Territory. 3 of the biggest deposits are owned by Ranger, Pan Continental and Noranda mining companies. With these 3 companies seeking to develop their uranium deposits, it was seen as desirable that facilities to service the mines should be shared, hence the decision to build the town of Jabiru. When Ranger won approval to develop its uranium deposits, the Northern Territory government saw the need to retain control of development in the environmentally sensitive Kakadu National Park. Thus it was that in January 1979, the Jabiru Town Development Authority was formed. One of its first tasks was to appoint project managers for the job, Cameron McNamara Minenco joint venture. It would be this firm's job to develop plans and designs for the township, then supervise all subsequent construction for the $100 million project. It's a big project, but the joint venturers have worked on projects of a similar scale before. Cameron McNamara and partners are experienced in town planning, major road construction and dam building, while Minenco is experienced in the specifics of town site development, having been involved in building the mining towns of Weipa, Tom Price and Parabadoo. The Jabiru Town Development Authority itself consists of representatives of government departments and the Ranger Mining Company. It is responsible directly to the Territory's Chief Minister and ultimately is responsible for coordinating the Jabiru project. Within 5 months of its formation, on June the 29th, the first contract for work at Jabiru was awarded, and 3 days later, July the 2nd, 1979, the most significant step of signing contract documents took place. There was no time lost. Within a fortnight, the first contractors were on site and the massive project had begun. Clearing was underway for the first of the town's roads, designated Road 1, the main feeder leading from the Arnhem Highway into what would eventually be a township of 2,000 people, with a projected cost of $100 million. It had always been intended that Jabiru would be an open town, one to which visitors and tourists could come freely. But because of its location within a national park that encompasses some of the top end's most spectacular scenery, there was seen to be a need to observe strict environmental standards. These standards were set before work began and included the tagging of trees, for which a financial penalty would be imposed in the event of damage or destruction. They were selected by the Territory Parks and Wildlife Service because they were well-developed members of their species. With penalties ranging from $1,000 to $10,000, there was a strong incentive for contractors to take care. That first month also saw a start on drilling bores at the Barrel site on low land on the eastern edge of the town site. They would supply the first water to the town during the construction phase, a time when abundant water would be essential, not only for the needs of the first stage camp for construction workers, but also to keep down dust. As the month of July progressed, so did work in a number of areas, as the road network was extended to reach some of the major sites of development, such as the construction camp, the caravan park, and the service trades area. Preliminary work was undertaken for the installation underground of such services as water supplies, power, telephones, and the sewerage system. The main sewerage system particularly was planned with an over-design factor, which would allow the town of Jabiru to eventually accommodate up to 6,000 people, 3 times the projected size. It was a precaution taken against the time when all 3 mines might be operating at full capacity. The service trades area had been cleared by this time, and contractors were laying in the stocks of pipe and other equipment they would need as work speeded up. August 1979 saw the official job sign erected, and with it came a sense that the Jabiru project was really on its way. While there was considerable ongoing work during that month, the most significant event was the mobilization on site of the contractor responsible for Stage 1 construction of the caravan park. The first stage of the caravan park consisted of laying services for ablution blocks and laundries, which would provide 30 sites for caravans and also for demountables housing married staff of the project management team and government employees working in the Jabiru area. By September, the Jabiru town site was clearly taking shape, with major roads already well defined and work underway on the temporary construction camp with its capacity of 150 men. A temporary water supply had become available from the Barrelil Creek bores. In addition, a number of smaller streets and cul-de-sac in proposed residential areas were at the clearing stage, and the service trades area was clearly defined. September saw the arrival on site of the demountable buildings, constructed in Adelaide, which would provide accommodation for the first big group of construction workers. The buildings, each providing private air-conditioned rooms for 50 men, also included shared laundry and ablution facilities. While these were going in, roadworks around the town site were continuing. By now, many were properly formed and the work of curbing was on the move. That same month, the third since work began, also saw the development of the first electricity supplies in the construction camp area. Because the camp was only a temporary installation, power supplies were installed overhead. It was intended that power supplies in the caravan park and township would be underground. As the temporary distribution system was being installed, work was also continuing on the business end of the power system, the number 1 power station comprising 3 machines with a total capacity of 1,000 kilowatts. October saw the start on the clearing of ground for the permanent water storage for Jabiru, an on-ground reinforced concrete reservoir of 5 million litres capacity, and what was to be the most visually interesting project, an elevated reservoir of reinforced concrete with a capacity of 750,000 litres. With the first stage of the provision of services to the caravan park completed, the way was cleared to begin on the second stage. The first stage had comprised 1 laundry block and 15 ablution blocks to allow for a total of 30 sites. Stage 2 was to see this expanded to 50 sites with the addition of 2 more laundry and 10 more ablution blocks. The second stage was also to incorporate solar water heating instead of the electric units in Stage 1 buildings. October also saw the packaged sewage treatment plant come into operation, which allowed the occupation of the first stage of the construction camp and the first demountables and caravans to go on site in the caravan park. With a water supply and a sewerage system in operation, the way was clear for the first big influx of workers. With the end of the year and the wet season approaching, there was increasing pressure to get as much work done as possible before rains closed down the work. Foundations for the on-ground reservoir were laid, and the central supporting stem for the elevated water reservoir was raised. Once the walls of the on-ground reservoir started to move up, each week saw dramatic progress on this project, which was of vital importance in an area which is virtually without rainfall for 6 months of the year. But rains do come, and the end of 1979 saw the wet season in full swing, and few things can slow down a major construction project more than the rainfall of the tropics. However, the rain could not stop work completely, and the early months of 1980 saw continuing progress in such areas as the installation of underground services, water and drainage in the first subdivision to be developed in the town site. Roadworks were also progressing with sealing underway in the construction camp area as well as in the caravan park. At the same time, the second stage of the caravan park was completely ready for occupation. Forecasts of development at Jabiru had indicated there would be a need for expanded single men's accommodation later in 1980. However, this was brought forward to allow greater advantage to be taken of the 1980 dry season, and as a result, the early part of the year saw a start on the expansion of the contractors' camp to hold 600 men. Foundations were established for the temporary transportable buildings. Unlike the rest of Jabiru Township, which is being built to last, the contractors' village has always been seen as only a temporary stage, intended for removal when the town itself is completed. With the first quarter of 1980 out of the way and rains easing, there was more evidence of dramatic progress, particularly in the construction of the on-ground water reservoir, which was nearing completion. And in April, one of the most exciting moments to date, the start of work on the first 100 houses for Ranger employees. It marked the start of one of the biggest single contracts, provision of housing worth a total of $6.5 million. As the end of the first year of the Jabiru construction phase drew to a close, the on-ground reservoir was completed and the spectacular elevated reservoir had started to take its unusual shape. The bowl was formed of precast concrete around the base of the stem, which is as high as a 10-story building. The bowl was then jacked up into position at the top of the tower. Destined to become a landmark visible for some distance, the elevated reservoir presented interesting technical problems in its construction. The elevated reservoir is just one visible sign of a project that must be regarded as one of the most exciting carried out in the Northern Territory, and certainly the biggest in which the Territory government has been involved. When the township of 2,000 people is completed in early 1982, Jabiru will have a full range of modern services. Primary and secondary schooling, an 8-bed hospital, shops, a bank, a motel, and a service station will be built. As well, there'll be a wide range of recreation facilities, including an artificial lake, swimming pool, and a golf course, as well as a television station. In fact, there will be every convenience for those who will eventually call Jabiru their home.